In the stories of the Bible, Adam and Eve were the mythological first man and woman. You may already know that there are actually two creation stories weaved together for this narrative. In one of those stories, God created Adam out of the dust of the ground, and then later created Eve out of one of Adam's ribs. She is subsequently blamed for all of mankind's problems. She, according to the story, was tempted by a serpent to eating fruit from the tree that Yahweh had forbidden the humans from eating. There were many inconsistencies in these stories, such as God being all-knowing and then surprised when they ate from the tree. And when he learns that the humans had eaten from the tree, he punishes them. He kicks them out of the garden and curses all women by making them menstruate. You know, women's menstruation was called a curse until recently in some societies. In this story, Adam and Eve are central to the belief that humanity is in essence a single family, with everyone descended from a single pair of original ancestors.
So like a curious traveler on a quest, we embark upon a journey of information. Stay with us for a ride into knowledge.
However, in the book of Genesis, in chapters 1 through 5, there are two creation narratives with two distinct different stories. In the first, Adam and Eve are not named. Instead, humankind was created in God's image and instructed to multiply and be stewards over everything else. In the second narrative, God fashions Adam from the dust of the ground and places him in the garden. Adam is told that he can eat freely from all the trees in the garden except from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And then later, Eve is created from one of Adam's ribs to be his companion. They are innocent and unembarrassed about their nakedness. However, a serpent convinces Eve to eat fruit from the forbidden tree, and she gives some of the fruit to Adam. These acts not only give them additional knowledge, but it gives them the ability to conjure up concepts such as shame and evil. Yahweh later curses the serpent and the ground. He prophetically tells the woman and the man what the consequences of their sin will be, and then he banishes them. The story underwent extensive elaboration in later Abrahamic traditions, and it has been extensively analyzed by modern biblical scholars. Interpretations and beliefs regarding Adam and Eve and the story revolving around them vary across religions and sects. For example, the Islamic version of the story holds that Adam and Eve were equally responsible for their sins of hubris, instead of Eve being the first one to be unfaithful. Now, the story of Adam and Eve is often depicted in art, and it has been an important influence in literature and poetry. However, these days, the story of Adam and Eve and their fall is most often considered to be an allegory. This is because the findings of population genetics, particularly those concerning Y-chromosomal Adam and mitochondrial Eve, indicates that the first Adam and Eve pair of human being never existed. Primal history forms the opening chapters of the Torah, 5 books making up the history of the origins of Israel. And this has led scholars to suppose that this history formed a late composition attached to Genesis and the Pentateuch to serve as a foundational myth for the exiled in Babylon. Just how late is a subject for debate. At one extreme are those who see it as a product of the Hellenistic period, in which case it cannot be earlier than the first decades of the 4th century BCE. And on the other hand, the Yahweh source has been dated by some scholars to the exilic pre-Persian period, the 6th century BCE, precisely because the primeval history contains so much Babylonian influence in the form of myth. The primeval history draws on 2 distinct sources. Analysts, like the documentary hypothesis, also suggest that the text is the result of a compilation of multiple previous traditions, explaining apparent contradictions. Other stories of the same canonical book, like the Genesis flood narrative, are also understood as having been influenced by older literature, with parallels in the older Epic of Gilgamesh. Let's finish with what biology says. The most recent common ancestors of humans, when traced back to using the Y chromosome from the male lineage and the mitochondrial DNA for the female lineage, are commonly called Y-chromosomal Adam and mitochondrial Eve, respectively. However, they do not fork from a single couple at the same epoch, even if the names were borrowed from the Torah.
Just more food for thought.
Thanks for watching this and all our videos. Please like, share, and subscribe. And until we meet again, stay curious, fellow travelers, and have a great day.